And finally, everyone, the results are in. All of the build-up to this, yesterday's election. Now, today, results are in. We know where we stand. Let's just call this, for the purpose of this conversation, the morning after, because now we know exactly what the outcome is, and we're very sure going forward, the conversation will assume a different curve altogether. I want to take a look at all of the issues that led up to the election itself, and going forward, what the issues should be. But let's just set the record straight for those who may have missed the outcome, the bottom line, as they call it. We understand, as announced by Inec, in the end, APC scored 223,619 votes, and the PDP scored 307,955 votes. And Inec has announced the PDP governorship candidates in the EDO 2020 governorship election, Godwin Obaseki, as the winner and governor-elect of the state. So we want to have conversations around these developments and what we should be learning from the process, especially as it touches on our electoral process in this country on the one hand, and then ultimately, on the other hand, our democratic practice in Nigeria. I'm joined by two gentlemen to help us make sense of this discussion. First, I have very next to me, Reverend Austin Arega. Is a public Humphrey Arega, I should say. Is a public affairs commentator. Thank you for coming to join us for this discussion. We appreciate it.
Sunday. Thank you, everyone.
And next to him is Comrade Christopher Jekiri. He's Programs Manager, Foundation for Good Governance and Social Change. For many weeks leading up to the election, he had been here to also lend his voice to the discussions about this election, and to talk about how critical it will be in reshaping development and politics in this state. Christopher, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Okay. I want to begin with Reverend Humphrey. You have talked about politics a lot, especially on the international scene, but let's come back home for once, if you don't mind. This has been a defining moment for Edo politics in particular, and for politics in general for Nigeria as a country. When elections are around the corner, you hear people talk about free, fair, transparent, and credible polls. Do we have those four elements as far as this election is concerned?
Well, it will be very difficult to give a very blanket statement, because, like I said, what the build-up, because election is not adjudged by the very last point. It comes from the beginning of the electoral process. I cannot confidently say that the electoral process and the election have had that credible election of free, fair, and transparent. I go back to even the selection process of the political parties. You find there were a lot of acrimonies. There's a lot of banter here and there. The primaries for the parties were not free and fair. But in some cases, there were no even primaries. We are hearing of almost about 12 candidates, about 12 parties now. During the process, we didn't hear of some of them. So we didn't know how the candidates emerged. So that shows to you that we still have a crude process. I think that's because parties are not owned by members, they are owned by individuals who determines what happens, because he who pays the piper dictates the tune. So there's a need for a reordering of the electoral process, of the party process, primaries, that brings about the candidates that we're talking about. Two is the fact that there's a whole lot of money bags being used.
All right.
The politics is too much monetized, and so there's a lot of corruption in the process, whether in the party primaries or in the local election. We have heard of vote buying and selling, and so if you have that, it cannot be free and fair, because there's a whole lot of tampering of those issues involved. But I also believe that when you don't have some transparent issues for the election itself, I want to appreciate that this is fairer. For me, this is fairer than what we had in 2016. We didn't hear of a lot of altercations, of noises and here during the election. There were pockets of them. The environment was calm, and I want to believe that God gave us grace to have a calm election as against the upbeat. During the campaign, we hear less of policies and programs than of mudslinging. And when you come to that issue of acrimony, and that leads to a lot of tension, you cannot be talking of free and fair. So I believe that we need to retune the process so that we can have an opportunity for people to voice their thoughts, especially the citizens. First, I was just talking behind the scenes just now. When we have 2.2 million persons who are supposed to be voters, and you're having less than 600 voters, it shows that apathy exists. It shows that fear also has been fear and intimidation because of what was going to happen. People were afraid. And so some of them will not have come out to vote because they were afraid whether they will be free and whether the voter will be free. But I believe that the government and the people need to begin to see politics as a game of service, not as a war zone where people are destroyed, where people's lives are destroyed. So I want to believe that if the process going to the election is not free and fair, to me the election cannot be said to be free and fair because a lot of things and a lot of issues has to be built into it. I want to also believe that Inec need to do more work. We see a lot of political parties. In the process, we didn't even hear some of them campaign. So how do you have a governorship candidate who people don't know, and yet is in the ballot box? So we need to be asking ourselves, must everybody be in the ballot box? If you cannot win a councillorship election, must that political party exist? Is that a political party? I think these are things because it also makes it more expensive, you know. And some of
for the government,
for the government, and even for the people. You are, because of the election, you have brought in how many security agencies?
In the case of Edo State, for example, we understand 14 parties fielded candidates.
But we're only hearing 2. At best, 2 and 2.5. We join the other one as half. But that is not what it should be. Again, we didn't have a lot of debates where the candidates, the NUG and all, need to come together and hold a panel for all the candidates.
All the candidates.
Yes, to let us see who they are. We didn't see that. So we didn't really give opportunity to the citizens to hear and know. I've also said that we don't do election campaign in this country. We do noise making. Because when you go to a crowd and you're talking, nobody's hearing you. You're hearing bits of music, you're hearing noises, nobody knows what you're talking about. No town hall meetings where interrogations can be done with the citizens and the people on issues. What affects Bobaka, for instance, does not affect Akoko Edo. So they should be able to have those issues.
So you're saying we should raise our game in terms of interaction,
yes,
between those who are running for offices and the people.
And the people, so that we can know who you are voting for, you know what you are voting for. So I'll be able to ask, at the end of the day, how am I going to measure your success if I don't know what you are going to do?
I want to talk to Christopher, but there's something I want you to quickly address. You mentioned it in passing, by the way. That's the element of voter apathy. It's been a problem in our elections in this country. It will appear people don't trust the system enough to want to risk it all, as it were, to want to go vote. Even though we have seen a bit of a tilt for the better in this election, but some persons say that's not significant enough. How do we continue to work tirelessly to ensure that we discourage as much as possible voter apathy? I'm talking to Reverend Offrey now.
Well, I think 2 things are involved.
Okay.
The citizens on one side and the government apparatus and the politicians on the other side. One is the fact that if a people are not content, if there's discontentment with the people, they're not going to hear what you're talking about. If their welfare is not taken care of, if they're not sure that their life will be better, they forget about it and go and do some other thing that will better their lives. So the government must have to give the citizens the hope and trust. Like I said, the citizens don't trust whatever government is doing these days. So if you say something is going to be, they just tell you it's not correct. They're just making propaganda. There must be that trust must be built. But the citizens must also realize that if you don't vote, you have told anybody who cares to hold government to do whatever they want to do with your life. Your life is involved. You are in this state. Whatever government does affects your life. So you must be able to say, look, I want to participate. It's a deliberate choice to say, look, I must be involved in whatever is happening for my own sake, for the sake of your future. So government need to give the environment to be able to. I've advocated the fact that, 2, Inec must be independent. For now, the independent, like it's written there, doesn't work because they are tied to the apron of government. Government dictates who and who becomes members of commission and all. And there's influence. We have heard of people who are holding party cards being electoral commissioners. That does not give confidence. It must be independent of government, which means their resources must be from the National Assembly. Give your and they must be accountable. And two is the fact that the party process must also be fine-tuned so that people can be involved. Like I said just now, members or individuals who even want to join political parties do not have the privilege of having a say in something that happened in the political process. Because those who pay the piper dictates the tune, those who bring the money to say they bring the money to run the party, they make choices of who become. And that's why we are talking of Godfatherism and all of them. If all of us are contributors to the party and we have decision making, nobody is above each other. I think the electoral umpire and the government should be able to make, and the National Assembly, precise, make laws to govern the formation and administration of parties. We don't hear of accountability of parties. And how do you get your money to run your party? How do you get the money to fund the electoral campaign? You're able to let it be seen and let us know who is donating what, and who is doing what. So that we can, if there are no transparency, then anything happens. I think the citizens must make the choice of it. Two is the fact that the citizens must not have that apathy to say whether I vote or not, it doesn't matter. You see, it's a conception. Once you make up your mind, it doesn't matter whether I vote or not, you have already defeated yourself. You must say your vote counts, and you must be willing to make a sacrifice. Everything is a sacrifice. Sacrifice for that thing to happen. To say, look, if all of us are in the polling booth and one person is coming to snatch vote, why is it possible for one person to snatch a ballot box and all of us are waiting?
They say because the person is armed, for instance, and they fear for their lives.
Look, we have seen some things. If once a crowd moves to a person, there is a disorientation for the person who want to commit crime. But there must be that willingness. And also the
I need to interrupt you quickly so we can get back to Christopher. But we need to take a break. At this point, we are still looking at the issues regarding these elections, and this election and the outcome that we have seen so far. We're back shortly. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us on the program. There you have it. The PDP governorship candidate, Governor Obaseki, has been declared returned, elected governor, of course. Governor-elect. And we're looking at the issues regarding this election. Yes, we know there's a closure to it as far as the election itself is concerned. But let's look at some of the factors in the build-up to the election. And then going forward, the issues that are associated with many of the other very important and salient matters that we should be looking at, not just because of Edo State, but for Nigeria as a whole. There are those who are now saying that this election is a defining moment for not just Edo State's governorship election, as it were, but ultimately for election in this country. They are saying that this is a curve, and we must have some very specific lessons we're learning, which, of course, by all means, we must be responsible enough to replicate going forward. There's another gentleman joining us on the program, just to be sure that we're having a robust conversation about all of these issues. Professor Benson Osadolo is former Dean, Student Affairs, University of Benin. He's also now the HOD, that is, of course, the head of department, History and International Studies here at UNIBEN. Thank you, Prof, for coming to join us this evening.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
We appreciate it. We were here yesterday, and today we want to also draw from your observation as far as this election is concerned. But I want to turn to Chris quickly. I was going to talk to you about how that a lot of people believe that this time, away from what we have seen the last several years of conducting elections in Nigeria, that the people now practically own the process. The people are not so interested. They want to know how it begins, how it runs, and then, of course, ultimately, how it winds up. Are we encouraged by the outcome of this election?
Well, permit me to first congratulate the governor-elect, who is also the governor of Edo State, Mr. Godwin Noyerase Obaseki, for his re-election for another 4-year term to continue the good work which he has been doing. So I say congratulations to Governor Godwin Obaseki. Anybody, to your question now, anybody who has been in the States during this electionary period and who is a keen watcher of political events and development would have noticed undoubtedly that there was a paradigm shift away from the usual run of electoral practices, democratic practices, electoral activities, and configurations. And this is what I mean. We have, for the first time, a governorship candidate who moved away from the party that brought him into power in his first tenure. In the middle of the tenure, towards the tail end of his tenure, as a result of certain irreconcilable intra-party differences, had to move away from that party into what was the opposition party in the States. And in moving, the political space.
Chris, I'm going to interrupt you quickly. We understand that Best Simbere, one of our reporters on the ground, is joining us now. So help us have an insight into what it is like in town. If you look at your screen right now, you're seeing Jubilation, and of course you're seeing that Jubilation has to do with the outcome of this election. People waving the flags of the People's Democratic Party, whose candidate has been announced by Inec to have won this election. You can see the umbrella, which of course is the symbol and the brand ID, if you don't mind, of the independent national, of the PDP. And of course, nobody expected anything less, looking at the fact that the candidate of that party has been declared the winner of this election. On the screen now, we have Best Simbere, who is standing by for us, has been doing a great job since yesterday, bringing us live feeds as far as this election is concerned. Best, it's good to have you join us at this point. You want to give us some detail as to what is happening on the street right now? We can hear you loud and clear, Best. Go ahead.
Very good. We're right here at the Popular Roundabout Park. Like I mentioned to you before, okay, let me show you the crowd of people who are actually on the street So this is how far at the moment traffic on this side, and then over here you see them already, members of the People's Democratic Party are on the street right now, celebrating the victory of Governor Godfatherism. I think they are not including those on the road. They are joining them in the celebration right now. They are very happy that Governor Godfatherism has returned elected as the governor of Edo State. We are actually trying to manage our way from this place. Everyone is on the road celebrating this passers-by over the victory of Governor Godfatherism of Godfatherism.
It's amazing how much we are seeing on the street at this point. Best Mbere, one of our reporters on the feed, bringing us real-time live feeds from around the Ramat Park area. That's somewhere in Ikubaha local government area of Edo State. Just so we have an insight as to what this outcome means for the People's Democratic Party in particular, and going forward. We also would like to see what response from the other side, which of course the APC would be. But for now, we're just letting you know what the PDP, how they're celebrating, at least around Igbobaha, Ramat Park area in particular. Best Mbere, thank you for this live feed that you're bringing for us. Best Mbere is one of our reporters on the field, and she will keep us posted as to what developments are from that end. Earlier, we also showed you a few other images, feeds from town as to what it's like around Benin City in particular right now, how people are celebrating, how they are receiving these results as announced by Independent National Electoral Commission. I was just talking to Chris a while ago about all of these issues, and you were talking about how... Yes,
I was saying that...
about only the process.
Exactly. I was saying that intra-party, because of time factor,
right,
that intra-party incident pitted the governor against what you may refer to as a heavy status quo, packed full by all the big forces that constituted or comprised the party from where he came. You have the former national chairman of the party there, you have the former secretary to government and the former, governorship candidate in the state, all of them packed, and all the big names. And to make matters worse for the governor, those who were his aides, who were working closely with him, were moving in droves to that other camp. Then you had some other big names in the business world, and big names in the social sphere, all moving into one side. And the governor, so to speak, as it were, was standing, as he himself said, he had no godfather, but he had God the Father. But God the Father was not going to come down from heaven to vote for him. And so the Edo people, that's why you saw what you have seen now, decided that they have an opportunity here to express themselves, to tell the status quo and the other heavily packed team that they have had something within them which they've been wishing and itching to express, and that is democratic freedom and democratic liberation. That they want a process where they will not be told after election that a particular candidate was imposed on them against their wishes. So what they were going to do was that they were going to make their own choice and express through the ballots that choice, and that is what you have seen. And nobody can take it away from Edo people, that Edo people became the full owners. In fact, I was at the Ring Road when Governor Obaseki addressed a very important and potent group in this election called the Edo Voters Volunteers Assembly. And when he saw the passion and he saw the motivation from the people, he said, if you watch it on TV, he said, "I dey fear," because he realized that the people were committing him to a struggle and committing him to taking on the responsibility of helping them express this by not going back and staying this course, irrespective of whatever was fighting against him or he was fighting against. So the people owns this process, the people had owned the process, and that is why you find that the man who was accused or who is accused of being a thrifty, prudent, almost too prudent manager of resources, the man who is accused of refusing to take care of stomach infrastructure has such an army of people on the streets on a daily basis for the past 2 months, individuals organizing around and among themselves activities on behalf of Godwin Obaseki, T-shirts and caps of 2+2, talk bar, and all sorts of ingenuity coming up on the street and coming out from the people on behalf of Godwin Obaseki across the state. And today is reflected in the results. The result that you have there is 14 local government area against 5. When you think of the weight, when you think of the money that you saw pre-election and on election day spent by those who think that money politics was still the people's way of expressing themselves, by those who did not understand the kind of awareness that had gone on, the political awareness and consciousness that have been raised by the activities, by those who have always undermined the will of the people and thought that the people did not have any expression and the people did not have any discretion or initiative to make their own statement when they needed to. If you see the money that have been spent and all the kind of things, my senior brother here was talking just now about apathy. Apathy, this voters' apathy wasn't caused because people didn't have awareness. Few weeks to the election, or few days to the election, Edo State became almost militarized. There was too much, 31,000 police officers to come and police Edo State. And then when you are driving through the homes of some of these principal actors in the elections, you will find almost a quarter of that 31,000 parked on the streets and in the gates of some of these principal actors. And so there were psychological messages being sent to the voters to threaten them and make them afraid to come out to vote, and all sorts of propaganda. You had language in the political space that we have never heard in Edo State. When people begin to qualify themselves as lions and tiger, what kind of message? I remember attending a program, a CSO's program, a few days to the election, and the woman, after the national orientation woman had spoken, and then CSOs have spoken, the woman said, I think I have some respite now. I might have to come out to vote. That she was afraid. There are those who have become so petrified, they didn't come out to vote because of the pre-election tension that was building, all of them from a particular political camp. So what I'm trying to say is that he made mention of Inec. I also want to quickly touch that before I allow Prof to talk. Now, Inec need to up their games. A lot of people who register, we have 2.something million registered voters, but how many of them actually got their PVCs?
About 1.7.
Yes, how many of them actually got their PVC? And there was no proper orientation to tell you that there were alternatives, that if you didn't have your PVC, you could vote. They said incidence form was no longer allowed. They didn't say you had an ingenious way, an innovative way of identifying a voter who, if the candidate didn't read your PVC, for those who had, you could also vote. So people just sat at home, some who might have PVC, those who went there to vote actually, and you find situations where you have polling units, 700 and something people registered, and only about 200 and something were able to vote. You find situations where you have 1,000 something registered voters, and only about 400 people were able to vote. The 800 people went there, but the PVC discouraged about 200 and something, and the other 200 and something votes were void.
There's so much we can say about Inec as far as this discussion is concerned, but I want to talk to Professor Sadalo about all of these issues that we're seeing come up at this point. Have we seen much of opposition in this election? Because it will appear for the most part it was a two-horse race. When we say opposition, did we see it manifest in this election, per se, beyond the two major horses in the manner of speaking?
Yeah, first and foremost, let me congratulate His Excellency, Godwin Obaseki, for his victory, just announced by Inec, for re-election as the governor of Edo State. We are proud of him because he did not cowardly cave in when he was threatened and blackmailed into believing that politics is owned by a group of people, rather than politics belonging to the people. So we congratulate him for his efforts and for his determination to ensure that he will do his best for his people. Now, looking at the issue of opposition politics in Edo State, it's actually difficult in the Edo State terrain to define opposition politics. The governor himself, for 8 years, he worked with Adaso Shomole in APC. He was in government. In 2016, he also came to government. He was still in government for 3 years, while the PDP was in opposition. It was their attempt to mess him up, which he resisted, that made him now to move to PDP. Now, as soon as he joined the PDP, he became the leader of the party. And automatically, that became the ruling party of the state. And the APC now became the opposition party. However, one would expect that the APC would have been able to form a formidable opposition against the PDP. It was not so. First, again, the APC was divided into two. You had two factions and two factional leadership, from the chairman to the officers, one faction. Another faction, chairman, officers were there. However, the law recognized just one faction. But the faction that broke away with another leadership emerged from a group known as Edo People's Movement.
The EPM.
EPM, Edo People's Movement. They did not form any formidable political opposition against the government. Rather, their interest was fighting an individual. You see, that is where they make mistake in politics. When you want to understand opposition politics, you are looking at the programs of government, you are looking at what government is doing, you are telling the people, no, it's not doing it this way, it should be done this way. This is how, government should deal with the problems of the society and of the state. But 100% in their conversations, in their dialogues, in their debates, focused on Godwin Obaseki. And so, the kind of opposition which now emerged was now between this APM faction of APC versus Obaseki and Edo people. And so, it was now a kind of opposition. The people, which they expressed yesterday, that look, why are they fighting this man? What has he done wrong? So the people took up that challenge. They said, look, we must stop this kind of politics in Edo State. Focus on issues. Focus on the vision. Focus on the wisdom of the governor. Focus on what he wants to accomplish. Focus on his ideas. Rather than, for example, a former governor and a former national chairman could come on air at a campaign in opposition to say he sold a bad product. That is the most reckless statement I've ever heard in political history. And it's bad. When you are in opposition, all you have to do is to understand that opposition politics is as interesting as those in government.
That's true.
And therefore, you want to let the world know that you are not playing opposition on personal basis, because government is not personal. You are playing your opposition in relation to the politics of the government in power. And that is the mistake they have made. But that mistake has been corrected by the Edo people.
On account of this election?
Oh yes. Oh yes. I was on the ground to go and vote, because my wife, we all went to go and vote. So in fact, the ones they counted now, mine is among. I won my unit, I won my ward, I won my local government. It's there, yesterday, what I saw was quite interesting. Say, collect their money, don't vote for them. Which means they are resisting that kind of opposition politics of making it too individualistic, attacking individuals, attacking the personality. Why don't you focus on this program? Because they know that opposition politics When he focuses on the program, the evidence is there. Yes, Governor Obaseki has accomplished a lot in terms of what he promised the people in 2016. If you remember, sir, in 2016, Obaseki has the manifesto titled The Road to Prosperity. Odumame, as we say it in Benin, The Road to Prosperity. Odumame. One check. APC Manifesto 2016. For that 4 years, he has his own thinking about governance, the reforms, and how to push his own ideas for the benefit of the people. Around his own thinking is that the people must come first, the state must come first. Therefore, whatever bigger resources was available to the state, to him, should be used for the benefit of the people. And the people saw this. So that is why yesterday they said, look, this opposition, they are not opposing him properly. They are not playing their opposition politics properly. Let us bring him back. And that is why he came back. Don't also forget that he has evidence to show for what he has accomplished. But more importantly, he came out with a mega manifesto saying, look, in 2016, I told you we will be moving from this point for the next 4 years to 2020. By 2020, he said, look, let us go beyond this. For the next 4 years, this will be our target. But you see, the beauty of Governor Obaseki is that he's saying, look, even if he leaves Edo State as governor for the next 4 years, where will Edo be the next 30 years? And so he had a roadmap for Edo the next 30 years that will benefit the people. And that is why the economy is going to bounce back in such a way that you're going to have a kind of economic revolution. And what was he thinking about all of these things? The background is the Oshoma power plant, the refinery, the gas plant, critical infrastructure, etc. So the opposition did not have anything to say about those programs. And that is why they couldn't make it up yesterday.
Okay, let me turn to Humphrey now. I mean, you have followed elections in this country over time. In this particular election, for example, we have seen very bitter rhetorics from both sides, but it will appear there was a tilt, as it were. And people say these kind of rhetorics naturally leave bad blood that rub off on not just the politics, but again, the people, because it creates division as to how the people think and look at electoral process. Going forward, what should politicians be learning? Because in this election, for example, we've seen some politicians coming forward to say they are retracting what they said 4 years ago. They didn't mean it in a certain sense, that they were quoted out of context and so on and so forth. Isn't there some very fundamental lessons we should be learning, especially for the political class?
Very well. There are fundamental issues that one must look at, whether for the politicians, for the individual persons, for governments, because every exercise brings up a lot of issues that need to be examined. And if you don't learn from history, you can't move forward. And that's why our nation is a little bit static, because we don't learn. I appreciated my prof when he was talking. And my only problem with the issue is that we don't have opposition political parties. PDP, APC, they're the same people. Look at it. They are the same people just jumping from one place to another. Because there is nothing distinctive in any of them. If we have, like you see in America, you have the Democrat, you have the Republican, they have their pathway. They know where they are going. So even when you fail in one election, you don't just jump to another to say, I want to go and contest. You must purge yourself for some things for them to be able to accommodate you to do some things. But in Nigeria, in Africa, that doesn't happen because we don't really know what the dividing line is. Somebody can sleep in one party and wake up the other party, and you just walk along. I think until we begin to see different perspectives of thought, then we're able to make, let us know what choice are we making, what kind of persons. Our politics have been so personalized. And like Obama said, we create strong men, we don't create strong institutions.
Exactly.
And once you don't have strong institutions, there's no way you can check individuals. And that's why somebody can wake up and make statements as if he's a god. he tells you this must happen. You are not a God. You are a human being. You have one vote, I have one vote. Okay? But we need to be able to situate ourselves. I think we need to begin to rethink our political structure. Like I said earlier, we don't even have democracy in our party politics. It doesn't exist. So if you don't have democracy in your party politics, how will you have democracy in your governance?
What do we say to people who, for example, will tell you that there's no such thing as saying there's no Godfatherism, that there's always Godfatherism in every form of democracy across the world, including in the US, for example, even though in terms of nomenclature, they will tell you it's establishment, for instance. The question is, if in fact and in reality, you always would have Godfatherism, how do we deal with the problem of Nigeria? Because some of us, I mean, some people in this country will think the real problem in our politics is Godfatherism. If we take that variable away, does it solve all the problems?
You see, we don't have Godfatherism in America. We have mentors.
Exactly. And those
mentors are those who brought you or who brought you or who you look out for. They come to you, they counsel you, you go to them. We don't go in Africa, your Godfatherism who has money but have no ideas. That's not politics. Politics is a game of diplomacy. You have ideas, I have ideas. We look at it, we banter it, and we see who has a better idea. Why do we harmonize it? That's why for you to form a political party, you must have men of like minds, people who think alike. That's right. They have a project. It's okay, let's form a platform to execute that project. In Nigeria, you don't have that. You have people of strength bedfellows just coming together for the sake of seizing power and have access to the resources. That's why we have a problem. Every politician today, every few, are not taking about the welfare of the people. They are talking about how they can amass wealth for themselves and their family. And so they do everything to do that. If you are going to serve as a servant, you don't force me, you don't bribe me, you don't give me money to vote for you to go and serve me. It doesn't make sense to anybody. You know, it shows that you have a different motive entirely. If you want to serve, you offer yourself. If they accept, you say yeah. If they don't accept, you leave and go somewhere else. There are places to serve. I think we need to look at defined service. Unfortunately, again, in Nigeria, especially in Africa, politicians, most of them, had no other business. They have made politics their business. And so they see it as an investment that must use returns. In other places where you have civilization, people who go into politics are those who have done something somewhere and they are coming to offer service to the community and to people who cannot offer themselves up because they don't have the resources and time for some of these things. So there's a disconnect somewhere that we need to begin to, until we redefine that. If you don't have a basis, if you don't have a solid foundation, whatever structure you put on it will collapse. And that's why the systems are collapsing.
Chris, let's talk about post-election violence. I'm going to come back to you.
No, let's just finish.
Okay, you're not done. Okay, go ahead.
I also find it very difficult when you say a governor or a president is the leader of a party.
But isn't that the reality we have in this country?
No, but that's true. Where's the chairman of the party? Where's the party itself?
They say they are figureheads.
Yes, that's why, because the governor have access to the purse, the president have access to the purse, and they utilize it for the party, which is supposed to be for the entire individual, citizens. So we have this wrong mentality of what we're doing, and until we restructure it, we will fall into this same problem all the time.
You want to add something to that quickly before I come back to Chris?
Yes, just very briefly about this issue of Godfatherism and mentorship. Take Barack Obama of the US. He had no godfather. He was such a brilliant politician who was identified at his party convention as a man fit to rule America. People rallied around financiers to support his campaign. Look at Trump. Trump already had the resources to run an election without support, and he did. Now, when in the US, you collect monies are paid, to support campaigns, you are accountable for every one kobo. But in the case of Nigeria, there's a money bag that says, I'm going to sponsor you to become whatever. And these are the conditions. You may even go into taking an unknown covenant. Yes. You go and take an oath that once you win that election, you will pay back the money, but this and that contract will be his own. Of course, the person begins to prognose into your own affairs. Even if you are governor, that becomes Godfatherism. Like Reverend said, that is not mentorship. Mentorship is to look at young individuals in politics, those who are growing, for example, and then begin to discuss political issues with them, ideas with them, understanding about politics and society with them, and they begin to push them forward. We are mentoring them to become great in future, which they will appreciate, and which, of course, will be of benefit not only to them but to society. We're not doing that. In Nigeria, for example, somebody stays in Lagos and says, this is what must happen in Edo State, and fly down to come and begin to influence people with money. But Edo State has taught them now that even if you bring 20 billion to share to the people, they will collect your money, they will vote against you.
Okay. Why we're still having all of this conversation, Chris, we've seen in this country instances time and again where election results are announced, just the way Inec had done a while ago, and then you find some pockets of violence at different points across the country. I mean, where it is, for example, the general election, but this is, as it were, an off-cycle election, which means it's just for the states. How do we what kind of measures should we put in place by way of being proactive to ensure we nip such possibility in the bud?
There are several reasons that lead to post-election violence. The most important of them is that the people have perceived that their will have been subverted. Either subverted by the existing status quo, in connivance with institutions like Inec that is charged with the responsibility of conducting the election, or subverted by any other means. So if you have that kind of situation, it is almost always inevitable. And that's why Awolowo said, those who make peaceful transition impossible, make violent transition or violence inevitable. But where you have a situation where the people are allowed to make their choice, and they have chosen a particular person, as happened in this election, because I was very close to the different activities, processes, and thinking of the people of Edo State in this election, as Prof himself had noticed in his own polling unit. The people who were giving money to vote, if they had taken that money and they have subverted the will of some other people, and those people they had subverted their wills are in the majority, you would have post-election violence on the streets right now. But you are not likely to have any post-election violence on this election, except some criminally minded people who are mischief makers, who just think that for whatever reasons, society must defer to them or they will create anarchy. In that case, it is the law enforcement agencies that must be alert, vigilant, to deal very ruthlessly with such people. Because the generality of the people, as expressed in the ballots, and as being expressed now from some of the feeds you are getting here right now, on the streets of Edo State, and as expressed in the social media, and as expressed by the Diaspora, and as expressed in various other outlets where human beings, especially human beings of Edo extraction, are allowed to express themselves, it's clear that the choice we have today is the choice of the people. It is undoubted. So post-election violence is not likely to follow. So in answering your question directly, the first thing to do, where you have such, talking academically now, is that before the election, as Reverend said, we must ensure that there is intra-party democracies. If you have intra-party democracy and the choice is the popular choice, the people who chose a man are not likely to rise up tomorrow to begin to fight him if he wins the election. What they are likely to do is to celebrate. So if you prevent intra-party democracy, and then the person who emerges is not the people's choice, if you allow heavy money politics, as was going to mar this election, if not for the resolve of Edo people, that Edo not be Lagos, and therefore Edo people will not allow you to introduce those primordial sentiments and analog way of politicking. Here, we have gone far beyond that in Edo State. So now, if you prevent such money-backed politicking, if you are able to stand up to those who want to manipulate state institutions, especially the state security forces, to subvert the people's will and emasculate their will, if you can prevent all of that, you are not likely ever going to have post-election violence, because it is the people who involve in post-election violence. So if people feel and know that their will that they express through the ballot have been upheld by the institution put in charge to do so, which is INEC, then the people are going to be on the streets jubilating, except you call jubilation post-election ballot. I don't know if you include that as part of your...
I want to push the process.
Yes.
I mean, still talking about all of these issues about the process leading up to this election. I mean, INEC has been, as it were, barged over time as regards perceived inadequacies here and there. I mean, instances, for example, where elections are postponed, like we saw in 2019, on the very morning of the election itself. But a lot of persons are saying this is what we have seen in this election in those states is a far cry for the better from what we have seen with INEC in the past. For example, they are citing what they see as innovation on the part of INEC. They are saying for the first time, real time, INEC brought about certain electronic platforms where you could follow election results online, real time. Election results were released as soon as they were available. Shouldn't we give INEC some pat on the back and going forward, encourage them to take a cue from this?
If I teach very well, you come and tell me that I'm teaching very well. Come and pat on my back. Or your pastor has preached very well in church.
But you have had students who will give you pat on the back.
No, they just come.
I being one, for example.
They just comment on you have done very well.
Yes.
Look, INEC as an institution or an electoral body itself has its own mandate. And within the mandate of INEC, it has electoral laws guiding it. Within the context of electoral laws, they have their code of conduct. They have their rules of engagement. They begin to work. However, at a point in the past, you hear that based on intelligence reports, it's unfortunate the election that was supposed to hold tomorrow will no longer hold. They will not address the nation. It will now hold in 2 weeks. The intelligence report may not be coming because of the fear of violence, because a particular political party senses danger of losing the election. And therefore, the tendency may be there, I'm not saying it is there, the tendency may be there to begin to influence the electoral empire, that is the INEC. Because people just want victory at all costs. INEC is independent. The process of appointing the chairman and the national commissioners is faulty. You do not allow the president of a country to appoint the chairman of an independent body and also appoint the commissioners.
So does that take away from the independence of INEC?
Of course it does. If it's independent, it must be independent. Have you ever heard, for example, say take the last 12 years in America, so that we don't go too far, that Obama one day has said he has appointed the electoral chairman of the United States, or even in Germany? It's not possible. There's a process for it, and strictly independent, so that when they conduct election, as far as they are concerned, their responsibility is not to those in government, but to the people. But you find here where the responsibility of those who conduct election is first and foremost to the person that has appointed them into it. However, 1 year is not too far away. Last year we had federal elections in Nigeria. We know what happened in the elections. And then we're having other elections now, like Edo State election. And next month is Ondo election. Yesterday, we were in the studio talking about reports concerning, number one, 40 card readers. They were malfunctioning. Some didn't even work. Two, I noticed yesterday that the polling booths, in some units, they were polling booths. In some units, they were not polling booths. For example, in Ovia, Okada, I watched it when our daddy went to vote. And I noticed how he voted, and the wife. It was too exposed. Because I was just watching the clip, and I said, look, why is there no booth around this area? That's one. Number three, there were no specific instructions given to the electoral officers on the ground on how to manage the process. In some areas, you go and vote secretly, you open the paper is held in your hand, you come out to where people are queuing to go and drop it, which was fundamentally wrong. In some other cases, it's by the side. So if Inec says they have had some kind of training program for their officers, why is it not uniform? Do it this way. This should be done. And from your own observation, if you do otherwise, you've got to sanction them and not even pay them for what they have done. But all of that did not happen. So yesterday we saw different people using their initiatives to conduct the election. That is not institutional. So if you want to make Inec functional, so that people will be proud of the results that they're going to get from the election, then of course Inec has to sit up. I said yesterday that it has cost Nigeria billions of naira to conduct elections, particularly to get materials, including these card readers. Let Inec make them work. I said yesterday, even when election results were being released, there was an attempt to say, okay, let us stop, and then we resume at a particular point in time. People were already apprehensive. Messages were flying on the social media. Please get in touch with this, get in touch with that, so that they don't survive the process. The time you stop and resume again, anything can happen.
In between.
In between. So this is where Inec has to learn its lesson.
While we're hoping Inec will learn this very important lesson, let's talk about diaspora involvement in this election in particular. A lot of persons are saying we have never seen it this high. Oh, yes. I mean, people in the diaspora getting so involved in an off-grid election, as some persons have called it. I mean, isn't that an interesting thing that we're saying?
Yes, everybody is looking back home because they have investment.
That's right.
The money that comes from diaspora to this country is huge. And if a man has an investment, he has to look at how the investment can be productive.
Right.
You know, but I think it should go beyond having interest. They should be allowed to vote.
Exactly.
Diaspora voting, right?
Yes. They should have allowed to vote. The other countries allow them to. They are citizens of this country or this state. They should be allowed to. And that's what will have happened if the electoral law was signed into law. That's why we are asking, why is it difficult for the electoral amendment law to be signed into law? That would have given some high percentage of credibility to the things involved. And we are still asking, why is Inec not independent as it should be? It's something that if you are participating in an election and you are the person who is appointing the supervisory officers, of course you have already compromised it. Nobody's going to the other people will not trust you to the fact that you will be fair to them. So, but if you say it's independent, so we have told the South a lie, like they read the Constitution, the Constitution that we have now, when the military gave up on there and say we the people, when we didn't ask the people. It doesn't make any sense. We should be able to do that. But I think because, like I also keep saying, people have also said, those who are supposed to change the law know that if they change the law, it will no longer benefit them because they are benefiting from the chaos. And only a few of them are benefiting from it. So we need to have a people's anger against the incompetencies. We know, we have heard of people who are card-carrying members, who are Inec commissioners or so. That shouldn't happen. Because human beings being what they are, you have sentiments.
That's right.
And once you have allegiance to something, you want to make it to that side. So we need independent individuals. We have independent individuals in this country who don't have affiliation to any party, but they have love for this country.
Right.
Grant them an opportunity to do that so that we can have what it takes to get people of reason. You see, people today don't participate in politics because they don't have the confidence that if they bring their character and capacity, that it will not be soiled. You know, you want to go to, I'm asking a question, why is there no independent candidature still in this country? Because if you have independent candidature, there are people who will not go to any political party. They want to put themselves together and present who they are and be able to do that. And that's electoral, it's also too expensive. In this country, people go to take loan. When you take a loan to form party, to go and campaign, what are you looking for? You're going to pay back that loan. And you're not going to go to pay, even if you take it in the bank, you're going to pay with interest. So the first thing you're going to do is, so how do I do things to bring back the money? That's why we find that there's a lot of kickback and kick forward from contracts. And you know, politicians are good at rewarding contracts. If the thing is not spoiled to pay the awarded contract, nobody does anything. They wait for it to get spoiled so that you can award contract for them to have money back for themselves. So I think we need to, as citizens, tell ourselves, and I was telling somebody, I said, before the independence in this country, it was students' unionism that used to champion development. Today, where is that happening? We don't have student unionism with patriotic minds who are thinking of how this should survive. So the young people, and I also ask them, where are the young people? We're talking about, I said to somebody, I said, look, people say leaders of tomorrow. I said they are leaders of today. National Assembly, over 80% of national reps, House of Reps, are youth. What is happening? So we have not had that sense of nationality. Let us also devoid ourselves of primordial sentiments, especially of sectoral sentiments, of cultural sentiments, of religious sentiments. People will not vote if their person is not there. Whether the person is competent or not, oh, this is my person. We should be talking of competence. We shouldn't be talking of regional issues.
I think these are issues that require a lot of effort, obviously, now and in the future.
Yes. But we have to begin to, because election is coming. You know,
the general election.
2023 is not far.
After next year.
Is here.
Yeah.
You know, because we need to begin to tell ourselves who we come, like Paul Bradley said. Most times, people who go to elected positions don't come out on their own. People notice them from what they are doing, for what they do.
Ideally.
And they prompt them, and they aid them to go to these places.
Reverend Rega, I'm just going to give 1 minute now to Christopher here to help us just make sense of certain things. There are people who say to you, look, in this country, for the most part, you have had a history of governors who in their second term do next to no work at all because they have to recoup whatever it is they have spent over time. How does the Obaseki case create a disruption along that line?
Now, the reason why that happens is holistic, and the most culpable reason among that holistic group is that expensive political structure that we run here. The people are very quick to blame such governance, but they forget that during the process that produced the governor, their demands were out of this world. The governor has to buy your soap to wash clothes. He has to pay for your mother's burial. He has to visit your father, you are visiting your father.
Your daughter's wedding?
Yes, he has to attend your daughter's wedding. So, and in Edo State, for instance, 2,625 units across the state, every single person is making demands on the governor. As at that time, nobody is asking where he's getting the money. Right. The governor wants to meet all of that demands. After he meets that demand, the first week of office, they are saying he promised that he would tar our roads, and now he's not doing anything about it. We have to be realistic. It must not be we against them. The people have to know, they have to begin to be sensible. And that is why I like what happened now, that this governor came as through a process of the people's will. So I am hoping that the people will also understand, and the governor will be responsive and responsible enough to the people to take them through a process. We want this to succeed because I think it's a revolution. It's a people's revolution. So the governor needs to continue to explain.
A non-violent one.
Yes,
right?
A non-violent revolution. The governor needs to continue to explain to the people why he is going to take certain decisions he's going to take in the second term. How some of these projects that Prof mentioned are supposed to come to maturation before they begin to see results. And the people have to understand and go along with it. If we are hoping that that works, if that works, that has begun what we hoped for and why we supported him.
Okay,
yes.
Whatever it turns out, we must keep hope alive. Again, congratulations to the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Godwin Obaseki, who has been adjudged the winner of this election by the Independent National Electoral Commission. I want to thank so especially my 3 brilliant guests on the program who have had incisive conversation with us on this very historic day. Professor Benson Osadolo, former Dean of Student Affairs and Head of Department History and International Studies at the prestigious University of Benin. Thank you, Prof, for coming to join us. We appreciate it. And we also have here in the studio Comrade Christopher Jekiri. He's Programs Manager. Let's see now, Foundation for Good Governance and Social Change. Christopher, we are always grateful.
Congratulations, Edo people.
You had to say that. And then, of course, Reverend Humphrey Arenga, brilliant public affairs analyst and political commentator. Thank you so much for coming, Reverend.
Thank you very much. I will thank God for the peace that is reigning, we pray is be sustained.
Amen.
Of course,
we can have development.
that's our prayer and wish. We also want to thank all of our reporters scattered across this state for the wonderful work you guys have been doing since yesterday and overnight, even into today. I'm Muya Agmofwegbe. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of all of the analysis we brought your way since yesterday. Our coverage continues here on ITV. Stay with us.